Olá, pessoal. Boa noite. Estou vendo aqui quem está entrando já. Camila, Flávia, Gabriel, bem-vindos. Karine, Carla, Lucila. Que bom, Marcele. Bem-vindos todos. Renata, Tiago. Muito bom ver vocês todos aqui. Que bacana. A gente vai dar mais alguns minutinhos para todo mundo ir chegando e aí a gente começa a nossa conversa aqui com a Raj. Daqui a pouquinho a gente começa, eu vou aproveitar para desligar o telefone aqui, que, como vocês perceberam, está tocando. Eu vou desligar o telefone, já desligar. Agora são exatamente 7h01. Vamos esperar mais alguns minutinhos, mais 2 minutinhos. 7h03 a gente começa. Bem-vindos, quem mais que eu estou vendo aqui? Vivi, Stephanie, Rosana, Flávia, Alessandra. Bem-vindos a todos. Boa noite. Oi, Pati, bom te ver aqui, boa noite. Boa noite. E aí, Mauro, tudo bem? Marcele. Bom, vamos já começando, porque a gente chegou no horário aqui, já são 7h03. Então, novamente, boa noite a todos vocês. Muito obrigado por estarem aqui hoje com a gente, nessa conversa, nesse bate-papo sobre autoconhecimento, sobre liderança. E eu sou Alexandre Santilli, sou um dos sócios da Teia, e eu queria contar para vocês um pouquinho, né, o que inspirou nós a organizarmos essa conversa aqui, né, trazermos a Raj aqui conosco. Quando começou a pandemia mesmo, né, a partir de março, abril, a gente percebeu, né, muitos líderes e muitas pessoas sem muito saber o que fazer, uma situação nova para todo mundo, sem saber como lidar, né, com os seus times, não só falando de equipes nas organizações, mas também dentro de casa, como lidar com essa situação toda. E, ao mesmo tempo, o que a gente percebeu acontecendo? As pessoas buscando algumas saídas na meditação e outros tipos de terapias, mas com um objetivo muito mais de curativo, né, de alguma coisa muito mais passageira do que necessariamente transformacional, que fosse, vamos dizer assim, mais duradoura do ponto de vista de mudança, de transformação. E nesse meio tempo a gente conheceu a Raj, o Bernardo, um grande amigo que apresentou a Raj para a gente. Eu já conhecia o trabalho dela por ele, a gente se conheceu aqui, vou dizer pessoalmente, foi por vídeo, mas a gente se conheceu. O livro dela, esse livro aqui, acabou de ser lançado, aqui no Brasil não tinha sido lançado ainda, eu comprei o livro em inglês, li no Kindle, e percebi o seguinte, que existe um espaço, uma oportunidade muito grande, né, desse momento que a gente está vivendo, não só, né, para um alívio, né, dessa situação como um todo, né, de conseguir lidar com as pessoas, lidar com os times, com as equipes, mas também de transformação. E o que eu percebi, né, o que nós percebemos aqui na Teia, foi que a Raj justamente trabalha essa transformação. A grande experiência dela, né, a grande vivência dela toda em mais de 30 anos, se é que eu posso dizer isso, é transformar as pessoas, né, de um jeito diferente que a gente vai descobrir agora, a gente vai ver agora. Então, eu queria começar apresentando para vocês a Raj. Eu vou fazer as perguntas para ela em inglês. Quem quiser ouvir, tem um canal aí da tradução. Está com a gente aqui a Laís, né, que ajudou na organização, o Alexandre, o Ale, meu xará, que vai fazer a tradução. O Gustavo e o Mauro estão aqui com a gente para nos ajudar nesse bate-papo aqui. So, Raj, I just made a quick short introduction about leadership, about your work, saying that you are, how can I define you? You transform lives, you transform people. I think that's the best definition I could find, right? So that's what I just said. And so I want to start ask you a question. There are a lot of people, they have been, even some people sent it before here, before we started, people already sent this question, right? So that, first of all, you have a background, your story is very well, you tell your story very well here. You have, let's say, a background of being very pragmatic. You were a lawyer, prosecutor, right? So you are very fact-based and so on. And you changed, of course, you changed your life, you changed your purpose. And what we see today is most of the people in organizations that we lead with the leaders, they are very skeptical about this, how this transformation can happen. So I'd like to hear from you a little bit about your story and how this transformation happened with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for first this opportunity, and everyone out there. Hello to everyone. Boa noite. Good evening to all of you. Happy to be here. And as you correctly said, it's not just my education, it's not just my career that's very pragmatic, very bottom line, very left brain, but also the culture where I come from, right? As an Indian, for those of you who know, it's a very pragmatic culture. In fact, we left India to come to the United States, not for woo-woo fun, but because, you know, it's a land of opportunity. It's about business, it's about career, it's about wealth, it's about success. And that's why we would have left our home and come to the US. So very pragmatic. When I came into spirituality, I wasn't looking for it. In fact, I didn't even know that I was going to a spiritual program. I went thinking I'm going to a music concert. I had just moved from New York to Los Angeles. I didn't know anybody in LA. And I figured this is a way, an opportunity to meet people, build a community around me, and so on. And when I arrived, I realized that in fact it was not the sitarist Ravi Shankar, who no longer is on the planet. He passed away some years ago. But in fact, it's Sri Ravi Shankar, the spiritual master from India. And what I had going for me was just curiosity, because it wasn't like I'm thinking, oh, I need this, I want this. In fact, I stayed out of curiosity, and probably by some luck also. But while I was there, I fought tooth and nail in my head, you know. And at some point, when I did the program a couple of days later, I was overtly, being a lawyer, disagreeing, judging, dissecting, to the point where I said, well, if this is so amazing, why don't you just teach it in India? Why in America? You know? to that degree, I was very much a left brain person. And he said something to me, one sentence, which really stayed with me. And his sentence was, see, you've been doing it your way all this time. The only real proof, the only real science is to try it and see the results. If it doesn't work, don't do it. But don't take my word for it and don't take anyone else's word for it. And that made a lot of sense. To me, that was logical, practical, scientific, and personal. That is actually the key, I think. For anyone who's skeptical, my suggestion is be skeptical. Don't take anybody's word for it. But if you're skeptical and you take someone else's word for it, or because you read it but never experienced it, well, then you're not smart. So skeptical and not smart, the two together isn't the best remedy for success. You know, a smart person, someone who wants to succeed, who's a leader, who's proactive in life, says, okay, by now, especially, Alessandra, there's so much research done about soft skills, about looking inward, about core skills, about value and change from the inside out, and how happiness, self-awareness leads to success. It's not the other way around. And, you know, we can endlessly go on quoting science and research, but even better than that is your own experience. You have to do it to know, right?
Right, and you make it very clear, Raj, in your book, that you said, look, if you are skeptical, just start doing, try. And if you try and you see the difference, then we'll go on. And something that sometimes I see what happens with people, that sometimes they have to go to maybe a tragic event or a very difficult event to change. And the fact is, it doesn't have to be like this.
Yeah.
So what do you say for people that are, you know, just doing whatever they have been doing their whole life, and sometimes they start doing some kind of meditation or something different, and they stop and they come back to their old habits? So what's the really impulse for change, in your opinion?
Well, unfortunately, it's not in anyone's hand. Change is a constant in life, right? It's the only thing that is constant, is that everything's changing. But in today's world, I'm not just talking, you know, today as in yesterday, I'm talking last several years. There are so many disruptors. Our economy, our politics, our social structure, our family structure, everything is being reworked. Everything from millennials to X-Gen, right? Everybody is reworking. You no longer, no one really can afford to think from the same box of operating methodology, you know, conditioned mind. And if you look right now with the pandemic, everything is uncertain. And the more uncertainty there is, the more we are in the unknown, economically, politically, socially, structurally, the more you as an individual have to let go of a fixed, known comfort zone. You have to let go of how you have been doing something your whole life. You have to let go of what you think worked yesterday, get clear about where you are today, and more importantly, get clear about where you want to go tomorrow. And that only happens if you look inward. That's it. You can strategize, you can look at process, you can look at procedure, you can learn technology, but the future really truly is in human value, human only traits. And if we don't develop that through self-awareness, you will become obsolete. You know, there's a reason why Davos conference, the Milken Institute, I was recently on it as a speaker. There's a reason why they're speaking about emotional intelligence as one of the top 20 skills required by leaders. Now, emotional intelligence is a big word. Everybody talks about it and we have all our ideas. But the core of social intelligence, emotional intelligence, relationship intelligence is awareness, self-awareness, or awareness of oneself, other, your environment, your team, your organization. And there's just no way around that. If not, you keep doing the same thing, expecting different results. And one more time, we come back to how smart are we? Keep doing the same thing, looking for different results. No?
Thank you, thank you. And one thing that I see, I'll just say something in português. Pessoal, vocês podem colocar perguntas e respostas no Q&A. Desculpa, as perguntas no Q&A para a gente responder aqui, tá bom? So Raj, what I was saying that about self-awareness, it's something that you don't do it once, right? I see a lot of people that are very experienced leaders and they are still discovering themselves. And something that I would like to ask you, because you have a lot of experience also with executives, with leaders in companies, what are the most common, let's say, problems or challenges that leaders face? And what are the main, let's say, first steps or techniques that people start doing to rediscover themselves?
Yeah. So 100% on point. Self-discovery is not a one session or a one-time thing. It's a journey in life, right? Who we are today, where we are today, we didn't arrive in one moment. Even to brush our teeth, it took some time to cultivate and nurture a correct methodology and a direction, and then a habit, right? So the same is true, but this is even more internal work. And what we're talking about is the step number one is the recognition that, okay, as life evolves, as times change, as the economy changes, I also need to evolve and change. And unfortunately, 95, 99% of the people, including good leaders, very good leaders, what we do, we are hardwired by the time we're 8, 9 years old with a very conditioned assumption, belief system, operating system, methodology, right, wrong, should be, should not be. We're very hardwired. And then all we do is spend the rest of our life re-establishing the same things we learned before we were able to think, before we were conscious. When we're 10, when we're 15, when we're 18, for that matter, we are not developed enough to be conscious of the choices we take on as ourself, as our assumptions, as our ideas. And so the idea of self-reflection, self-awareness, is to now dive inward, to start to look at oneself. And there's steps to all of this. And one of the places, at least where I begin, is number one, to say, all right, let's really see how much do you operate from the past and how much do you operate by anticipating the future. That means, I hate to use the word coaching because it's overused, but that means engaging in dialogue where we start to say, Alexander, look, you think you're doing something new, but this is the same story that you picked up 5 years ago, 3 years ago, 10 years ago, 30 years ago. You know? So number one, recognizing how much of what you do and how you do is based on the past. Second step is to recognize, here's the trick. We think we have a future, but we actually don't. Because our future is nothing more than the anticipation of the past. Oh my God, last year when my business went this way, or when my marriage went that way, or when my life went that way, what if the same thing happens again? All we're doing is dragging the past into the future. So I really bring awareness to how much of you as an individual, as a leader, as an entrepreneur, as someone who's, for that matter, running HR, is operating from a fixed system. And then the second step is to empty out some of these stresses, some of these tensions, which is fear-based. See, we get nervous in life when we have to make new choices. We all do. It's not me, it's not you, it's all of us do. We're wired that way. And so we have to know how to reduce the fear, the regret, the past, so that we can make new choices. Yeah. So that we can look from a new beginner's mind. And from there on, what I do is I hold up a mirror. It's not easy. It's never easy. It takes courage to do it. If you want to go from good to great, you have to dig deep. If you look at the super successful people, whether it's a Steve Jobs or Warren Buffett or anybody else, they reinvent themselves again and again, and they don't buy into a system. They're willing to look from a beginner's eye. And that's where the work begins. You have to first look at where you are, where you want to go, and how you have been operating. And it's not easy, but it's the piece of the puzzle that makes everything that much easier, more successful, more relevant in today's time. Yeah?
Yes, yes. And what I feel is that it's very difficult to do it by yourself alone.
Yes.
Because somehow you have to have like a sparring, right? Some people that you can talk, that you can share, or which way I go. Of course, some things you will reflect by yourself, but this, let's say, this exchange of information and impression is very important.
You can't, you can't really do it on your own. See, if you look at our own mind, there's some pieces we're conscious of. Hardly 5%. That's a super genius awareness, 5%. But the rest of it, it's submerged under the water. 90, 80%, if you're super brilliant, is unconscious. We're really not aware. It's when no one is watching, even when we are not watching ourselves, is when this unconscious behavior, attitude, belief, and assumption comes into existence. So you need someone who can hold up a mirror and who can say, you think you're doing A, but really you're fooling yourself. You're really doing B. That is a necessary element as a leader, as a team, that's trying to collaborate on a project together, as a parent, as a father. It doesn't really matter. You have to look inward in order to be relevant, to matter.
Thank you, Raj. And there are a few questions here about from Camila and Patricia about how I'm trying to merge them and also build up a little bit. How can you work this self-awareness, this in the organizational set in companies where maybe the culture, they don't allow people to show their vulnerability?
And that needs a good trainer. This is why you have to bring in outside talent, right? You can't. Okay, let's speak a little bit about culture for a second, right? Every organization, big or small, they have a document that says the mission, it tells their value, and it also says their culture. Great. But how many leaders, how many staff members, how many managers actually walk the talk? What is written is what defines culture. So if you look, most people in the world give you strategy to live values. They don't actually embrace the value, they strategize, they do a behavior change. Well, that assumes that everybody around you is naive or stupid and you can fool them. But the truth is, you know when someone is sincere, you know when someone is genuine, and you know when someone is just pretending to live a value. True? We know that. Everybody knows. And so, if you're going to make culture strategy, everyone knows this expression, culture eats strategy for breakfast, meaning people around you will realize that all you're doing is manipulating, maneuvering, pretending that you are living the values. So I would give you an example. For instance, I was brought in for a half-a-day program in a company, equivalent to Uber, Lyft, perhaps you're aware of the company in Brazil, I don't know. And when I was brought in, their discussion, it was a full day program in which I had half a day, they had the other half. And the conversation was top 50 leaders coming together in order to restructure. Where are we going? Where are we and where are we headed? This was the conversation. And everyone agreed that they know the values. So I got up and I said, okay, please tell me your values. So everyone rattled it off. And then I created a simulation. And one of the value was the ability to speak up, even when we've made a mistake. Beautiful. It's necessary. If you have someone who's willing to say, I made a mistake, we can correct it and up level to the next game, right? Okay, I created a simulation with 50 leaders, top leaders in a company that's a disruptor in the world of transportation. And what ended up happening? There was not one leader who actually took a risk to share what was really going on. Now, what's the value of that? Number one, it's discovery. It's to really realize we're not walking the talk. The second thing then is for me and for them within each other to say, why? What's really holding us back? Where is the psychological safety that's required in this company in order for people to share and to open up and become a collaborative organization rather than a surviving fear-based organization? There is no way out but in. I often say that. And what I'm saying is you have to look in yourself in addition to strategy, in addition to process, in addition to procedure, in order to really up-level the game. And today, in this world, the new generation, they're not interested in authority. They're not interested in autocracy. They're not interested in following rules. They want to participate. They want to have a vote. They want to be inspired. They want to have purpose. They want to have meaning. And if you as a leader aren't living that, they say bye-bye and move on to the next company. And onboarding, when you lose people, is highly expensive, demoralizing, and it reduces your business.
Yes, I agree with you, Raj. But what I've been seeing in times when you don't have so many opportunities to change, let's say from the job, is that in the very beginning, people are like this. They start questioning, they start so on. But after some time, they're like abducted to the culture, and they start acting as everybody else. So they stop questioning. And when you provoke them for that, you say, look, you're not questioning anymore. And the excuse they give, this company is like this, I can't do this, I can't do that. So the question is, if you are in a company, of course, and you are not the CEO, and you are not in a C-level, you are not the board, you are a manager, a leader there in the middle of the pyramid, is it possible to start changing, or how far can we go?
So are you asking if a manager or someone below a manager who has no authority, can they change? And is there value for them? Absolutely. Look, of course, the leadership sets the context for the organization, for the team, and for all of the employees, of course, correct? But if the leadership isn't coming in and you want to support your management, or really the real capital of your company, just your general staff. You don't have them, you don't have a company. You know? A leader needs followers, right? So if you are starting to support your followers, meaning your staff, other than managers, what happens is they role model and hold above C-suites or managers or leaders accountable. If you make them brave, if you make them courageous, if you make them self-reflective, and they live values greater than the leaders, it forces the leader to have to come to the stage and say, oh, I better now look. It's important that I show up also. So it doesn't matter whether you stop top, bottom, or bottom to top. One is, of course, a little bit easier, I think, than another. But human beings are human beings. And look, the reality is 90% of life is relationship. 90%, certainly at home, but even in the most techie company, 90% of success of an organization is relationship. Only 10% is resources, hard resources and capital and economy and all those sort of things. Well, relationships are built on you being in touch with yourself and connecting with the people in front of you. Customer, vendor, boss, team, it doesn't matter. If you can't connect, if you can't really engage, I don't mean superficially, I don't mean politely. To the degree your connection is strong, to that degree, your staff will walk through a wall for you. They'll say, well, okay, Gustavo is a reliable person. I'm going to walk the distance. It doesn't matter. Let me see. I know it's time for me to go home, but this guy, he's amazing. And the truth, actually, two things really inspire people. We think it's bigger offices, we think it's money, and I'm not saying that's not true. Up to a certain amount, this is science, right? There's a lot of research on this. Up to a certain amount, I think it's like 39,000, I forget exactly, where up to that point, people are struggling for money. And then there's a certain amount of recognition. But after that, the best and the biggest inspiration is self-growth. If people feel like they have an opportunity to grow, to learn, to expand, they want to stay with that company, even giving up more money. That has been proven, go just read Harvard Business Review and so on. You'll see that people, especially this generation, they're not staying around because there's more money. They want to evolve, they want to grow, they want to find meaning, they want to connect, they want purpose. And for that, a company has to put that into its culture. It has to invest in humanity in order to invest financially.
And in this sense, how do you think it's possible to? There's a question from Thiago here, indeed, very good question, about creating this pressure from the bottom up, as we said now, right? So if you are not a C-level, how can you start this movement? I mean, if I'm here today, let's say tomorrow I have a meeting with my team. So what's the one thing or the first step that a leader can start doing to start this conversation, to start showing that it's possible to go through this direction?
So if I were working in a company, it's not coming top down, but I had either colleagues or a team that I report into. One of the biggest places to start is to be able to show up as human beings, meaning to be able to say, I don't know, to be able to say, let me look that up, to be able to recognize what someone did and give them the credit, to be willing to take the blame even if you didn't do it, to stand next to someone and say, we did it. These are basic changes, and they're not just changes in vocabulary, but you have to start to say, in saying we, in operating as a we, I up level not only their life, but my life. And people see this very clearly. So these are the most simplest changes that one can make, right? The other thing is, I will immediately always say, you have to make some time for yourself. It doesn't matter who you are. And that means at some level or another, a daily practice where you shut away the world of sense, external world outside, and you close
external world.
Exactly. We're hardwired to do 1,000 things outside, So you have to regroup, recharge internally, close your eyes, and then start to go deeper inward, shut down the extra mental activity. The truth is, we overwork our mind and underwork the body. And the rules of the game for productivity, efficiency, clarity, sharpness of intellect is the other way around. Less work mentally, more work physically makes for a stronger body and a smarter cognitive function, intellect, memory, analysis, decision making. And we don't do that. That is counterintuitive. Have you noticed when people are in trouble? What are you doing? How are you going to? I need to think about it. No, let the thinking go. It's killing you. It's the overthinking that is reducing your optimum cognitive functions. So let the thinking go. Find a way to unwind. Just pull back. It's simple tools, simple techniques. Anyone can do it. You have to learn it and then use it. It's like brushing your teeth. You brush your teeth every day. It took a little while to learn, but it does you a lot of good. You comb your hair, you bathe every day. You have to give the mind a break. You have to groom or comb out the knots that go on in our brain from overthinking, analyzing, strategizing, processing, labeling, judging. That drives more fear. And it depletes our life force. It depletes our energy. It depletes the intuitive, insightful intelligence.
Yeah, when you're talking about knowing about the other people, I think there was a good side of the pandemic that we started to interact by video like we are now. And for the first time, people are seeing what's behind it, at least a little bit, so I can see where you live. You live in a house, it's sunny there, or you can see if you have kids or you are in a small or big place, it doesn't matter. And this has led, I think, for some kind of a different connection between people.
But you see, you're proving the point. You're proving the point. The more human we show up at the office, the more we actually create on all the levels. Bottom line, camaraderie, innovation, creativity, customer care, all those pieces. So we are really talking about showing up more human at the office.
And Lucila has made a very good question here about all these changes. Do you think that these changes that people are going through the pandemic, right? So how is work going to be? Is going to really change, or do you think people are going to come back to the old standards in terms of connecting, in terms of knowing yourself, and so on?
I think it's a double-edged sword, because with the pandemic of connecting, there's also been, at some level, at least in this country, fear, right? You see people walking and they see someone on one side, they go on the other side because they're afraid to. And so if for a year or 2 years, at some level, our limbic, our emotional brain is on fear, what are we going to do? We're going to take that into other aspects of our life. I often say this: what you do one place, you do everywhere. How you do one thing, you do everything. This is just basic principle of human awareness and learning. How you do one thing, you will do everything. So if for a prolonged period we go on operating with caution and fear and anxiety, then it's bound to show up in other parts of our life. And we also lack, and we value now more than ever, the human engagement, human connection. We see the value of it. Those of you who are parents, your children are growing up in an opportunity to excel more than ever. Why? Because parents are home. There's nothing more, I don't know what the word is, but nothing more valuable in raising children to give them confidence, strength, a sense that I can do it, then parents influence. When they feel like I'm not alone, my mother's in my other room or my father's in the other room, unknowingly, this is part of human mind, you're building a sense of self, sense of value, sense of self-worthiness, sense of connection with self. So that piece is also increasing, you know? So both sides are growing, some caution, some connection. My hope certainly is that we will continue to connect more, even more than ever before, because we're going to realize that in the end, that matters more than anything. So it remains to be seen.
Yes, it makes sense. And in the book, you say something interesting about that the high life force manifests itself when somebody has it as a leadership and charisma. So people will follow you, as you said before. People will go through the walls for you, and so on. But there is let's say a mindset that says, look, I am introverted, I am shy, so how can I develop this? Will I ever be charismatic?
Mm. So this is, again, it's a conditioning that if I'm shy, that if I'm introverted, I cannot be charismatic. That they're not oppositions. Actually, shyness can be endearing. Shyness can be inviting. Shyness gives room for other people to open up. You know, it gives room to say, I can be vulnerable because the other person gives that space. So that's the first thing, is to disregard this belief, if you have, that if I'm shy or introverted or under soft spoken, that means I don't have the charisma or I cannot inspire people. That's it. From where I see, it's not true at all. You know? It would be hard to believe, but socially, I'm a shy person. For instance, I know what I know and I can share and I express, but if I'm sitting around in a group, I can be a very shy, soft spoken, introverted person because I'm not much for a lot of chit chat, number one. I don't know how to sit around palaver. I go straight to the point or I sit quietly, one or the other, you know. Second thing is the level of life force, the level of Shakti that you have directly impacts the vibration, the frequency that you invite back to you, the engagement, the interaction, the social connection that you invite back. So it isn't how loud you speak. It isn't how well you speak. It's the vibe that you give out. You know, people have presence. We know about this. Someone walks into a room, they don't say anything, but a part of you just goes to them. A child, they're this little, a baby. You know, you can fit them in two hands, but the way they look at you, what is in their eyes, is what we're talking about. That is raw power, magnetism. If you want, you can use the word charm, but it's still steady, centered, self-contained aspect of oneself. And that anybody can learn. Anyone can grow in it. Actually, when our battery is low, when our instrument, our mind, our brain, our intellect, when our body is tired, discharged, we function with a low frequency. We function less inviting, with less presence. And when we're rested and our energy is high, it's not what you say and how you say, it's just your being. You know? And through techniques like breathing, like meditation, like fine-tuning awareness about yourself, how you operate, what you do, and honest with it, transforms your vibe, transforms what you invite into your life. I know that sounds woo-woo probably, but it really is not.
Yes, yes. You were talking about the kids. I remember that I read in the book And so how we lost this ability to, as you said, to look like the look of the kid, because we don't really have to learn this because we know how to do it, right?
We don't lose it, we cover it up. It's not that we lose it. Look, probably by the time we're 8 or 9 months old, what do most parents do? They educate their children to start to use the intellect. It's a necessary thing, right? Intellect. What does it do? It labels, it analyzes, it dissects. It's very necessary. But we overstimulate that part and we don't allow observation, perception, pure perception to come in. So just to give you an example, I travel a lot. I'm with lots of families and I live with people. I don't usually end up in hotels. I live with families wherever I go. And many times I will be with a parent who has a child in the back seat and I will be sitting in the front, and children do what they do when they're driving, start fussing and complaining. And I always notice, what will the parent say? Look outside. Can you count how many blue cars are going by? Yes?
Yes, perfect.
So, but look what we have done. There's an entire world that is brand new to that child, whether they're 2 years old or 5 years old, doesn't matter. And instead of allowing them to have discovery, we point to a specific place for them to think. We point them to label and store in the memory and relabel and restore and label and store, and that's all we do. And we get them to function from a conditioned response. That's what we keep doing. This is how we train ourselves. This is how we train our children. And the trick is to be able to step out of fixed labels, look out of the world. Yes, you might see the blue car, but you might see a lot more other information so that you can create new neurological connections to process the data and come up with a new solution. I will give you statistics that's staggering. Every second, there is 300 billion bits of information that comes to us. 300 billion. How much do you think we register as human beings? Just guess.
I have no idea.
2,000. Just 2,000. Now, 2,000 is a lot. I'm not saying that's little. That's a lot of information coming, correct?
Right.
Imagine if you could take just the same 2,000 bits of information, and instead of creating the same pathway, blue cars and the number of blue cars, could create a different pathway and create a different direction, you would innovate. You would make decisions. You would process information. You would reach different solutions. You would see how to solve conflict in another way. But there's a second possibility. What if not just 2,000, but you could widen your lens a little bit and take in 2,500 bits of information? And you still make the same connection. Blue car. However, that blue car next to the green car processed differently. You would utilize the moment, the opportunity in front of you very differently. But 99% of us keep thinking, processing, analyzing the same stuff. And that takes away the power that I described in the child's eyes. It depletes our life force. It's a battery that's drained. And I'll just give a quick metaphor before I take your next question. If you have a cell phone or a computer, right, and you see it says 10% battery left, you do two things. Number one, run to charge your cell phone to the nearest station, right? And number two, if you don't find it, you close the apps, extra files that are open. So you save battery. Everything in life is energy. Everything depends on it. If you want to blink your eyes, digest your food, if you want to have a thought, if you want to change a negative thought to a positive thought, if you want to change a negative emotion to a positive emotion, if you want to inspire people, if you want to collaborate and get your team behind you, you need juice. You have to know how to close the files in here. Most of us don't even know how to close it when we're sleeping. Because I know a lot of people have sleep where 8 hours go by, and if you ask them in the morning, how did you sleep? They say, I feel like I was thinking all night. I don't feel I rested well. That means there were too many files open. Your unconscious was active. The 90%, which is unknown to us, was driving. In fact, that is what drives our choices, our actions. That is what we mean by limitations in assumptions and beliefs. And the only way out is in. In order to make that 90%, 80%, you gotta go inward. You have to become self-aware. There's no other opportunity than that, really.
I like this idea that the only way out is in, that we have a certain amount of energy, and the way you manage it, it makes all the difference.
That's right. That's right.
And how much you spend, for example, in this standard of efficiency, which is counting blue cars or whatever, is a pattern or standard of efficiency. Yeah. So what I feel that's not enough anymore to keep leading people, to keep innovation going on, to keep inspiring people, and so on. So if we don't, let's say, rebalance it, and I think that this moment has been a good opportunity for everybody to see that, to feel that some change will need to happen, then you probably won't achieve your whole potential. I think that's all about Shakti is, right? Yeah. How do you use your energy to achieve your whole potential?
Yeah. Well, so it's what you said, it's two things. How do you increase energy and figure out what's draining your energy, and then make a choice? What do you need keeping? What file do you need? Use it. What you don't need, close, right? It's a basic conversation. And the funny thing actually is, if you notice, when the pandemic started and the quarantine started over the world, suddenly, domestic strife, domestic violence, conflict, depression, anxiety, all of these things are on the rise. And there's good reason. Nobody knows what's going to happen tomorrow. Uncertainty around economy, job. But also, it's because suddenly people are spending time in close quarters without distractions, right? Self-awareness is having to look at oneself. We had lost distractions. You couldn't hang out in pubs, at least here, and sports games stopped and shopping malls had closed down. And so you couldn't avoid, distract. You couldn't keep running away from what goes on inside of yourself. We can distract, but we can't stop it from spilling over onto other things. So if you and I are upset at home, by the time I reach the office and my secretary or my assistant or something isn't the way I want, I'm going to spill what happened at home onto my work life. And similarly, if things are not going well at the office, when I get home, I'm going to spill that onto my relationship, my children. We are one unit. What we do one place, we do everywhere. All we do is change the object of the game, and we think we're doing something different, but we're not. We're really not.
Yeah. And Raj, we are almost 1 hour here. The time flies. And so one last question, because I know there are a lot of people that are here work in HR or work in companies also with HR. So what's the advice that you would give for a professional that works in HR and wants to bring this self-awareness, this inner look inside the company? So where to start from?
I mean, I'm sure people have heard a lot about mindfulness, right? There are all kinds of programs and things like that out there.
Everything, you have apps, you have courses, you have
Yeah, so there's all kinds of things like that. There are courses, there's, apps and things like that. At least what I offer is a more direct approach to awareness, whether it's oneself or the situation and things around you. Because, first of all, I've been doing this for 35 years. I'm giving away my age here, but yes, for that long. And the simplest road to going inward, one of the easiest place is through breath, is learning some tools and techniques that directly control your perception, your judgment, your thoughts, and the processes that go on inside of you. And so I often tell people, if you can't do anything, get an app. Start to learn to meditate, do something like that. But also, very simple, is to really find an opportunity to bring people in your company together and to ask open-ended questions about how are they and what's going on and what's working and what's not working. Create a system where there can be dialogue. You'll notice that it doesn't exist in most companies. Very little dialogue. There's chit chat. There's hola, how are you? And kind of beijo, kiss kiss, and that's it. But as a leader, as someone from whether it's HR or wherever, to really take a few moments of your day to walk the company, I often say, which means just walk your floor. How are you? Start to retain some information about people. How was your weekend? Oh, last week you had told me your mother was, how was that? If you really start to know the person, recall the person, and build relationship, you would see that that naturally takes you to the second step. These are just very simple things that I can say to do in this moment. And the simple, most obvious things are overlooked often.
I agree with you. I've heard so many stories about leaders, CEOs that they, of course, they don't know the names of everybody in the company, but they stop, they talk, they really connect with everyone. They are capable of doing this, and they do it as a routine, as something that's incorporated in their, let's
Yeah,
say, daily routine.
yeah, yeah.
And sometimes we change this for very standard practice, efficient practice, just looking for the final results, trying to beat the results and so on, and we forget about this side.
Correct. Correct. Yeah.
So thank you very much, Raj, for your time. So it was great. Time flew. It's already 8 o'clock, and there are many questions here about one of VV that really need to think about. How do you bring vulnerability and psychological safety where there is a power structure? I think we talked about that, and we must start trying, right? We must start having this conversation opening, even if you are not in a powerful position. Do you agree?
Yeah. See, I'll tell you something. When we're not conscious of the price and the reward we pay for keeping the behavior, we will not change. So the conversation isn't about how do we make someone vulnerable. The first question is how do we get someone to recognize what is the price and what is the gain if we were to move the way they are. You can't confront people directly in that way. What you have to do is educate people in recognizing that the price is far greater than the current reward they have in their hand. And that naturally makes someone want to change. This is about communication, you know? That's the other part of the self-awareness conversation, communication skills. And most of us don't know how to access what we experience, let alone second step, share, express what we feel. And those are trainable skills. It's not, I'm born with it or something. No. The more aware you are, the more you know how to do. It's a direct connection.
And as you said, the more you do and you start doing and you see the results, then you keep doing. It's like a, like a snowball.
Yes, yes, very much so.
So Raj, thank you very much. Speak Portuguese now. Okay.
Yes, just thank you everybody, all the
Gente,
listeners out there, and thank you so much for having me here. Thank you.
muito obrigado pela presença de todos vocês. Foi uma conversa ótima. Eu percebi assim que a gente teria muito assunto para falar muito mais tempo. Eu acho que para quem quer conhecer mais um pouco também do trabalho da Raj, tem o livro, né, que acabou de ser lançado aqui pela editora Sextante. É bem interessante, conta a história toda dela e muitos desses exemplos também que a gente debateu aqui. E eu acho que o caminho agora está aberto para a gente experimentar mais, testar mais, e inspirado, né, pela Raj também, mudar, se transformar, mesmo que você não tenha uma posição de poder, esteja numa empresa que aparentemente não permita isso, acho que a gente consegue fazendo isso nos grupos menores, no seu time, na sua equipe, e a gente começa a ver esse resultado acontecer. Então, eu queria agradecer a todos vocês, né, pela oportunidade de estar aqui também. Thank you so much, Raj, for your time and for sharing such important ideas and values about leadership, about knowing yourself in organization, because I think this is more important than ever, that we see ourselves in this. How do we, how do we transform ourselves to keep working in these organizations?
So in the meantime, as a group, it's always nice to take an intention. I know that a lot of difficult moments are going on for many people, everything from work to health to family and children, being home and so on. So as a group, at the end, I always just say, sort of like a prayer and a good wish, you know, to all of you out there, be safe, be healthy, and be happy. So God bless you. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, Raj. Muito obrigado a Lê, a Laís, a Ana, o Gus, o Mauro, que acompanharam e ajudaram a gente aqui. So, Raj, see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Tchau, tchau, pessoal. Obrigado.